and sharing this information with our community partners. We have people we're proud to know, from the nonprofit sector, the university, the public, private sector that use this data. So thanks for being here. It's all going to be on our website, which is MissoulaRealEstate.com. And with that, I would love, one thing, we have a kind of a theme we see emerging from this data this year about stabilization. So I'll let them explain that. But I would love to introduce our data committee. So a little bit out of order here. We have Carissa Trujillo. Okay, thank you. From Homeward, in for Julie. We have Mandy Snook, Realtor. Matt Gare, like bear, our lender. We have Derek Sheehan from the university, our economist. We have Brent Wahlberg, Realtor. Josh Plum, Realtor and Property Manager. And we have, you guys are out of order. We have Paul from IMEG, a senior planner down at the end. So without further ado, I will turn it over to these guys. Thank you for coming.
Good morning. Let's start talking about the area we're discussing today. We call it the Missoula urban area, and it includes both city and county neighborhoods. We are looking south from Lolo to north to Grant Creek Butler area. Starting at Big Flat, Blue Mountain to the Tura Clinton area and everything in between. These colored circles are from our supply data and in this context don't apply. All right, next slide. Can we get this spot off of it? Oh, thank you. Okay, perfect. Okay, let's start. Let's get into sales and volume data. This slide shows both sales and prices and the number of units sold. If you'll remember from 2023, our median price point was $550,000. This year, we stayed had moderate growth with 2.25% increase to finish the year at $562,400. The volume of homes was up very slightly with 984 units sold. Last year, we saw 952 units. While a 3.25% increase may not feel very big, it is worth noting that it's the first time we've seen an increase in sales volume since 2020. The 5 years before COVID had an average sales volume of 1,465 units sold per year. An important part of this slide is the ability to change the filter on the type of housing. I'm going to walk through the median price points for single family, townhomes, condos, and manufactured homes on owned land. The median sale price we report does not include manufactured homes on leased land. So we can select single family homes, which is $600,000 for 2020-24. Townhomes are at $469,900. Condos, $365,000. And lastly, manufactured homes on owned land were at $379,000. Next slide, please. Which is going to be the neighborhoods. Yep. Okay, great. Thank you, Jeff. All right. Our dashboards are continually updated, so you can go to the MissoulaRealEstate.com website anytime you want to see how the year is progressing. Slide 4 shows all the neighborhoods we are including in the area we report on, their median prices and the number of units sold. Again, you can look at all the types of housing at once or decide which specific area you'd like to look at. In 2024, the neighborhoods with the most sales, along with their median sale prices, are the Setupquin Mullen area had 162 units sold at and their median price was $550,000. A little over 30% of those were new construction. Franklin to the Fort with 103 units at $425,000. Lower Miller Creek had 86 units sold with $750,000 median price point. Lolo, 45 units sold with a median price point of $555,000, and Rose Park with 44 units sold at $560,600. Aside from Lower Miller Creek, these neighborhoods all had a median sale price under the 2024 median of $562,400. We have 2 neighborhoods remaining in the Missoula urban area with a median sale price under $400,000. That's the north side, and the west side, they came in at $377,500 and $340,250 respectively. All right, next slide. Each year, people are interested to hear how many cash transactions are happening in the market. Cash sales continue to be around 30%. This year, a small dip to 29.5%. All right, and our next slide. Lastly, let's talk about land lot sales. Land lot sales in Missoula continue to decrease. We had 62 lot sales with an increase of a median price point of 24%. The median lot price in Missoula is $205,000. And with that, I'm going to pass to Matt.
Thank you, Andy. Hi, everybody. I'm Matt. I'm here today to talk to you about the Housing Affordability Index. For those of you that are not familiar, the Housing Affordability Index is a single metric that is designed to compare median income versus median housing cost, a way of determining housing affordability as a single number, essentially. A number of 100 on the index indicates that income and cost are perfectly aligned. A number below 100 would indicate a lack of affordability, home prices outpacing income, and a number above 100 means that income is outpacing housing costs. So that's a simple explanation for you. Looking at recent trend in this, or the short recent history, in 2019, pre-COVID, we saw a housing affordability index of 94 that indicated a relatively healthy market. Heading into COVID, we saw a spike in affordability as interest rates plummeted, followed by rapid appreciation in home prices in 2021 and 2022 that, combined with then increasing interest rates, resulted in a rapid decline in the housing affordability index. 2023 and 2024, I think, can be defined by relative stabilization, at least compared to the handful of years prior, where the affordability index remains relatively low. We do have an affordability issue, but it is not continuing to get worse. I think that's the overall message here. Now, Jeff, if you can switch to the table for me that shows some of our numbers. A few key points that I want to highlight. So looking from 2023 to 2024, we do see that the HAI, the Housing Affordability Index, did decline. In our scenario with 5% down, that number went from 61 to 52. And for those with 20% down, it went from 74 to 62. This change, or this decline, is driven primarily by a decrease in median income for Missoula, down from just over $100,000 to approximately $90,000 per year. It's worth noting, however, that this decline is caused primarily by the methodology used by HUD, Housing and Urban Development, when reporting median income. In short, COVID stimulus money dropped out of the data. So the actual earned income from working is likely relatively unchanged from year to year. So while the number is down a little bit, I'd like to say that that may not be representative of the true lived experience of housing. Mortgage rates obviously are a big component of that housing affordability index, and the headline number that we report on the slide here is simply based on the national average for a 30-year fixed rate conventional loan at the end of the year, December 31st. However, in the course of the year 2024, interest rates did fluctuate pretty dramatically, a range from approximately 6.1% up to a high of about 7.5%. So during the course of the year, depending on what rate you got, your housing affordability index could vary pretty wildly. In the scenarios that we presented with 5% down, between the low and high interest rate, that monthly payment could have fluctuated by about $460. With 20% down, that's a little less, about $388, but it's worth noting that variability in interest rates continues to be a struggle for consumers, as it makes predictability in house hunting a little bit more difficult. Lastly, I'd like to note that while home price, income, and interest rates are the major components of the affordability index, the smaller contributing factors such as taxes and homeowners insurance are also contributing to a lack of affordability. They get a smaller piece of the blame pie, but they are not helping the situation. That's about all I've got for you today. I'm going to pass off to Brent.
Okay. While Jeff pulls up my slide there, you've heard so far, right? Values are still, median prices are still going up, but affordability is going down. Why on earth is that happening? Well, I think you've heard me say this before. It's because of supply. We are still having supply challenges in Missoula. We're seeing slow corrections, and we're going to show a few things to you real quickly here that kind of talks about what's going on in our market. This is, and you saw from the table before, we are now into our third year where interest rates are over 6%. Before that, they were between 3 and 4. So interest rates have more than doubled. Well, we're 3 years into this, but median sales prices are still climbing. And a lot of it is attributed to what you see here in our Missoula urban area supply chart. So I know a lot of you have heard me talk about this before, so I will very quickly just supply. It basically indicates the amount of homes to purchase compared to the buyers in the market. If you're in an undersupply, it usually leads to bidding wars, maximum price, over asking, or homes just attaining a sales price as high as possible. If you land in that kind of the green zone there, that's your normal range, you're more in balance. So there isn't usually power all in the buyer or seller's hands. And if you go over 9 and up into the top of that, then you're starting to move into oversupply. You can look all the way back, and this chart goes even further back, but you can look in the bubble years and they were, way the heck up there. But obviously what you see here is Missoula's ongoing supply issues have continued to be a major influence in this market. It wasn't until the second half of this year that supply notched up over 3 months, which is kind of our breaking point between undersupply and normal balance. The first half of the year supply was around 2.5 months. So when you look at these things, and then the interesting thing is at the end of this year, we hit 4 months of supply just about. The last time Missoula's market had 4 months of supply was the third quarter of 2015. So we have not seen the supply rates that we currently have for almost 10 years. Okay, hop me forward here. So what we also have is we look at supply as it pertains to neighborhood. And so a similar neighborhood chart to what you've seen when we report some of our median sales price and data and those type of things. We've also got those so you can see supply rates per neighborhood as we have these broken apart. Don't pay too much attention to the bubbles that you see. Those are just those are pinpoints, and I think the bubbles are in size to sales volume. But if you look at the chart on the right-hand side, what you're going to notice is neighborhoods effectively color-coded by supply. If it's red, it's undersupply. If it's green, it's balance. And if it's yellow, it's an oversupply. So obviously what we see here is we still have 13 of our 27 neighborhoods that we report on are in a undersupply situation. And no big surprise, of those 13, 8 of those neighborhoods all are under our market median price. The demand, the need for housing under our median price is driving these low supply rates in these neighborhoods because it's affordability. It's people are trying to find houses in those markets, and it's very challenging. We've got 11 in our normal range, and then we've got only just 2 neighborhoods in oversupply areas. All right, I think we got one more with me. And this one is this chart. You've seen this from us before. This is our hypothetical calculation of what's it going to take to get the market in balance. Because if we hit a balance portion of supply, it can lead to more opportunities for home buyers. Ongoing, I mean, we are balancing in price, but balancing in price at all points and more affordability and attainability. A couple just real fascinating things as you look at this. We break this apart by price point. We've done this for a few years now. Some areas, this is the interesting thing. Some areas, supply is actually in oversupply, $1 million plus. So if you're looking to buy $1 million home, good news. You can get a deal. Unfortunately, if you're looking to buy something more in kind of the middle point of Missoula's market, which is the broad range of 300,000 to 750,000, you can see our supply rates there are all effectively around 2 months of supply. It's in an undersupply. So this is our price point where the challenge and the need is quite strong. The other big observation that you grab from this is housing under 300,000 is virtually vanished from our market. Just 34 sales last year. I mean, you can look at the supply rates and say, okay, it's imbalanced or it just doesn't exist. But you look at that, there's just not housing at that price point anymore. It simply almost does not exist in our market. So what we calculate here is how many houses does our Missoula's market need to hit a perfect balance? And you can see there on the chart that we're short 226 houses. But if you look at kind of that center cut, that 300,000 to 750, you add that up, it needs 269 houses listed in that window. So if we're looking to add supply and add housing to meet buyer need, those are the price points where the need is. And I do believe that's my part. Paul, you're up, buddy.
Thanks, Brent. Paul Forsting. I'm a senior planner at IMEG here in Missoula. One thing we do at IMEG is we specialize in subdivisions. So let's talk about how we replenish the supply here in Missoula. When we think about subdivisions, there's two distinct phases to a subdivision that we should talk about. There's the preliminary plat phase and the final plat phase. And first thing we're going to talk about here is the preliminary plat phase. And that's the phase that most of you are probably aware of because it's the public outward facing part of the phase. That's where we have neighborhood meetings. That's where the project goes in front of the city council or the county commissioners. It's picked up by the media. It's where we're most familiar about a project. That's where we seek the approval of the project. And last year there was 10 subdivisions in the city and county combined. Coincidentally, that was the same number of subdivisions that was approved in 2023. And there was in the city of Missoula, we had 793 residential lots approved. That was an increase of more than 109 more lots. In the county, we had 229 lots. And that's reflective on the bottom chart there, or graph, excuse me. And combined, we had 1,022 residential lots approved. And that was an increase of 326 more lots than we had approved in 2023. And if we look at the graph, we span back 10 years. This is the most lots we've had approved in a 10-year period here, which is great. That's more residential lots we've had approved in the reporting period that we see here. It's not the most number of subdivisions that we've had approved, but a subdivision can range from 2 lots to 1,000 lots. So that's good. We've seen an increase in the number of subdivision lots being approved, which in a number of years, those will result in actual building permits. On to the next slide. So the second half of a subdivision is the actual filing of the final plat. And the filing of a final plat requires you to satisfy your conditions of approval. And the major component of filing your final plat is actually designing, engineering, and installing your infrastructure. And that can take several years. And so even though a subdivision was approved, say in 2023, we don't necessarily expect, or we shouldn't anticipate that subdivision is going to get filed the next year. It often takes several years to get filed. So in 2024, we had in the city of Missoula, we had 187 residential lots filed. That was an increase of 107 lots from 2023. In the county, we had 112 residential lots filed. And that was 52 more residential lots than were filed in 2023. And combined, we had 229 residential lots. And that's 159 more lots than were filed in 2023. So we saw an uptick in actual approvals of residential lots that were entitled through the preliminary plat phase. And then we saw an uptick in actual filed lots that were through the final platting phase. So that's good from both an entitlement phase and then what we can actually see from building permitting, which is good. Next slide, Jeff. And then I'm going to start by talking at the bottom, the townhouse exemption developments. This is what we're referred to as TEDs. We have a relatively low number, even though we saw an increase in 2024, we saw 47 TED units approved in the city of Missoula. That was an increase from 26 in 2023. That's a relatively low number of permitted units. Those are you can only do a TED in rare instances. There's relatively small projects. And in the county, we saw 0, and we haven't seen a TED since 2018. And that's because they're really select areas where you can do a TED in the county. And so we didn't see any last year in the county at all. Now we'll talk about building permits on the top. And in the city of Missoula, we had 599 residential building permits issued. 200 of those were single family homes. 21 were duplex units, and 378 were multifamily units. That was an increase of 192 more residential building permits than 2023. In the county, we saw 228 residential building permits. 143 of those were single family, 25 were duplex, and 60 were multifamily. And that was an increase of 32 more residential building permits. If we look at the graph there, you can see that the county's numbers stay relatively. We build about the same number of units in the county every year. If pretty flat, even though we did 32 more, doesn't really show up because we're pretty flat there. And in the city, it goes up and down quite a bit. That's where we see our change in the number of, it varies quite a bit in the city. So if we're thinking about where can we get more units and where does our variability occur, it happens in the city. And at this point, I wanted to kind of bring up, we had an interesting thing when we talking about building permits and our housing stock. We had a very important document was created by the city of Missoula called in December of 2024, was just adopted, called our Missoula 2045 land use plan. And this is a guiding document for our land use, our zoning, our subdivision regulations. It took a couple of years to put together by the city, and they hired consultants to put it together, and it's supposed to guide how our city grows. It projects how many housing units we need in our community. And so I wanted to put some context to our building permit numbers that we have here in our report, and pull some numbers out from that plan just so we can kind of have a comparison here. Policy objective number 1 from that plan talks about an increase in housing supply as a goal. And it goes on to state in that plan that the Missoula on average produces about a half as many housing units as we should for a healthy housing supply. And in the plan, they say they as a goal, they say for a 10-year period, we should produce on average 1,100 to 1,500 homes per year. And if you remember, we did about 600 this year. And then for a period of 15 years after that 10-year period, we should do around 900 to 1,100 homes. And that would allow Missoula to achieve a healthy vacancy rate of around 5 to 8%. And so I just found that to be interesting. That's a really important document that's going to guide our zoning and subdivision regulations. And, we don't often get an important document like that that's so recently adopted to kind of put context to our building permit numbers. So with that, I'll pass it over to Derek.
So my name is Derek Sheehan. I'm an economist. So depending on your perspective, I'm actually have good news. Montana's overall net migration has returned to normal. That means still positive and high, but nothing like we saw during the pandemic. Again, still positive, but nothing like the surge that we saw. People are really feeling the barriers to moving. That includes the rising mortgage costs, rents, insurance, and property taxes. And for places like Missoula, where affordability is an increasing challenge, this appears to be impacting migration trends. So as the historically hot markets, Missoula, Bozeman, and now Kalispell and Whitefish are seeing less migration over the last couple of years. Housing costs are shifting where people are choosing to go. So as a result, we're starting to see a little more demand spill into areas like Helena, Billings, and Great Falls. In fact, Great Falls will have 3 consecutive years of in-migration. And I'm really not trying to pick on Great Falls, but the winds of change are pulling residents into rather than out of the area. Either way, the shift is worth noting. So people might be sorting into and within the state, but they aren't leaving. The cost of moving, again, is a real barrier to some of these markets. So let's talk about natural change. Babies are back in Missoula. That's not the whole story. Natural change measures births minus deaths. So grandparents are also sticking around. Last year, Missoula saw a shift for the first time in a while. The rate of babies was higher than the rate of the residents that passed away. So it's a little too early to tell if there's a reversal in the natural change rate in Missoula. But just speaking with our labor and delivery team, the last couple of years have been very busy. So if there's one key takeaway, we're seeing a return to normal, and at least in these measures, normal migration patterns, more babies and more baby boomers. So thanks. With this, I'll turn it to Krista, and I have to get my grandpa to the airport.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Carissa Trujillo. I'm with Homeward. Last year, this committee formalized the importance of tracking data from both the self-sustaining or market rate supply, as well as the supported forms of housing in our community. By tracking data points along that housing continuum, we can more easily track how trends in one part of the market impact what we are seeing in other parts of the market. So today I'm fortunate to share some data from one of our close community partners, the Missoula Housing Authority, and particularly some trends that are emerging as they administer our largest local housing voucher programs. So for those of you who are not aware, just a quick explanation of what a housing voucher is. So for families who are making a more modest income in our community, so up to 50% of the area median income, which for a family of 3 is about $38,900, that with a voucher, they will pay 30% of their income towards their rent. And then the voucher will cover the difference between that 30% and the actual rental costs. So there are long wait lists for the vouchers, which we'll discuss. But once a person comes up next on the voucher to receive a voucher, then they have a certain amount of time, a limited amount of time, to then go find a rental that will accept their voucher. And historically, around 75%, we had about a 75% success rate. Starting in about 2020, we saw those success rates starting to drop pretty dramatically, even when the Housing Authority was able to extend that search time. The trend continues with the 2024 success rate sitting at about 50%. And so only 50% of folks who are able to get a voucher are able to find a rental to actually use that voucher. There are 2 large contributing factors to this. And the first one is there's a mismatch in the maximum amount that a rental voucher will pay. And those are standards that are set by HUD. So there's only so much a voucher can pay. And there's a mismatch between that and the current pricing for affordable rentals or available rentals. And then there's also just a lack of supply, as we've been discussing. And so if you take a look at the chart on the left, that shows you the number of people on the voucher wait list. And as you can see, the number of renters needing help to make their rent continues to increase year over year here in Missoula. An interesting note that you might be wondering about is that dip for 2021 and 2022. That dip doesn't necessarily indicate less need, but there were a number of applicants in that time when we saw that severe reduction in available rental units across the community. There were a lot of those applicants who received vouchers and then were not able to actually find a place to rent because of those market conditions. And so people came off the wait list and reduced the number, but didn't actually find housing that they could afford. These 2 charts help us understand the challenges and growing need on the supported side of our housing continuum. To return our focus to what is happening on the market rate side, I'm going to hand it over to Josh.
Thanks, Carissa. My name is Josh Plum with Plum Property Management here in Missoula to talk about the market rate rental overview. Historically, our data has been compiled from property management industry partners in the area. And the rental market in 2024 experienced some big shifts in vacancy rate and demand across both single family and multifamily. These changes were influenced by new construction, affordability challenges, and increased operational costs. As Paul said earlier, healthy market vacancy rates are between 5% and 8%, and that ensures the balance between demand and tenant choice while preventing excessive turnover losses for property owners. By the end of 2024, the multifamily vacancy rates had fallen well below this range, reinforcing the shortage of rental housing in Missoula. Missoula continues to have a high proportion of renters compared to homeowners, underscoring the need for sustainable rental housing solutions. So slide 3, the multifamily rental trends. At the close of 2023, the multifamily vacancy rate stood at 8.33%, one of the higher numbers that we've seen. However, that was based on a lot of new multifamily construction, bringing available unit counts up through 2023 and 2024. Throughout 2024, the steady addition of inventory initially sustained that higher vacancy rate, but with strong demand, and by December 2024, multifamily vacancy rate declined all the way to 2.63%. Sharp drop indicates that new rental units are being absorbed quickly and means we have a continued market demand across all multifamily. Trends on slide 3 for single family rentals. At the end of 2023, similarly, we stood at a 7.08% vacancy rate for single family homes. And affordability challenges slowed the demand of single family throughout several times in 2024. There's always a bit of traditional seasonality in the single family market, 3 and 4 plus bedroom homes, obviously not turning over as much during winter months. But during the summer months, the vacancy rate for single family rentals rose to 5.93%. That was the first time since brief periods in 2017 and 2019 that vacancy has exceeded 5% at all. The larger single family homes experienced the longest and pronounced vacancies, likely due to higher rental costs, limiting the pool of qualified applicants. Trends suggest that renters are increasingly opting for smaller homes or multifamily units where costs are generally lower. Another big factor is operational costs for landlords across all private and scalable asset classes. Big operational cost increases can be boiled down to maintenance and service expenses, utility costs, and the big two being property taxes, as have increased year over year, and property insurance premiums. There's been a big increase across all multifamily sectors, especially older properties, becoming almost to the point uninsurable in some cases for 100-year-old plus buildings. So that really affects a property owner's ability to cash flow those assets, which in turn affects your vacancy rates through demand and costs. Labor shortages have contributed to higher costs for routine upkeep and repairs. The rate of rental growth slowed year over year. However, we did see market increases across all asset class types. So Jeff, the rent increase slide 2, boiling this down to pulling out just a couple types. 1-bedroom multifamily saw an increase of 5.97% year over year. 2-bedroom was a double-digit increase of 10.21%. And then going to single-family homes, 3-bedroom single-family homes saw an increase of 10.8%, and a 4-bedroom single-family home saw an increase of 7.47%. So going into Q1 of 2025, predicting another spike in vacancy rates due to new assets being launched to market and delivered. And we'll see that continue to mirror with absorbing through 2025 of lowering the vacancy rate. Exciting thing that we've worked on this year with the help of MOR staff and the university, we've launched a new rental data collection tool. This will allow us to increase our polled units from 3,000 to we're targeting 10,000 by the end of the year. But the big change is private landlords are now invited to participate in our rental polling. So we've got some additional queries that will be on that form. And let's see, we have actually going back to Carissa's note, we have a tracking tool for vouchers used and in place by market rate landlords. So hopefully that'll give us a clearer picture of vouchers throughout the market rate. If you have any questions on that data collection tool, there's the QR code here, or reach out to myself or the MOR staff. Turn it back over to Mandy.
Thanks, Josh. We've been showing data since 2022 on property searches and inquiries of people who are looking at Missoula, and also where Missoulians are looking when they're searching on the internet on like third-party sites. This data is from Realtor.com, and it's based on real estate inquiries, not actual sales. So in 2024, 63% of inquiries are coming in from other states. And within that top 10 list, they tend to be from the Phoenix area, which has held consistent for the last 3 years. Seattle, Los Angeles, Chicago, and the Dallas-Fort Worth area. The 10% from within Montana that are searching in Missoula are pretty equally split between Helena, Billings, Bozeman, and Kalispell. Next slide. In 2020, and when Missoulians leave, the top 10 searches they are making are to other counties within Montana, with Ravalli County continuing to be the most popular. Must be those Como Trails. Okay, and with that, so as today's panel illustrates, Missoula is a community where a network of strategic partners collaborate to provide a comprehensive housing report. Through these collective efforts, our goal is to highlight housing trends and challenges across the housing continuum. helping people secure and maintain housing, expanding opportunities in supportive and non-market rate housing, and fostering conversations about market rate housing supply. In 2024, Missoula's housing market demonstrated resiliency by maintaining value despite nearly 3 years of interest rates that are nearly double what we saw during the pandemic. Home sales increased this year, and property values saw small but modest growth. While this stability benefits homeowners by preserving home equity, it also prevents challenges for buyers. Supply remains limited at the most accessible price points, and as the Housing Affordability Index reflects, higher interest rates continue to make homeownership a challenge for many. While segments of the market are stabilizing, access to housing remains difficult for a significant portion of our community. As Sheena mentioned, the data we continually collect is intended to support our strategic partners, including the introduction of our new rental tool. We recognize that timely, comprehensive housing data is a crucial foundation for meaningful discussions and innovative solutions. We are proud to continue providing these insights within our report. And with that, I'm going to pass to Jim Bashand, our CEO for Missoula Organization of Realtors, to do question and answer.
All right, it's Q&A time. For folks that are on Zoom, if you would just put your questions in chat and we'll read them through chat, greatly appreciate it. If you're in the room, just raise your hand and we have a couple mic runners who will run the mics around and then we'll figure out who best to address it to. And we got one right here, Mr. Schroeder, if you would take that. Please let us hold the mics.
Hi, my name is Cole Aragon. I'm with Egan Real Estate. I don't know if there's anybody in here on the tax appeal board. Please raise your hand. I had a great conversation, cold calling with this guy on the tax appeal board. He's been on the board for the last 18 years. He said last year was the first time that no tax appeal was turned in. I don't know if anybody could speak on that or why that would be, but it's either I thought that was kind of convenient. That came to my mind when it was said that the vouchers decreased.
Question in there, Cole?
Well, yeah, I was just wondering if there's any data on that or why that would be. I would think it's like kind of similar to the voucher decrease.
Yeah, we don't capture data on the tax appeal.
Yeah, good. The question is around tax appeal, and we don't capture data at MOR specifically related to tax appeals. And Chris, I mean, there isn't anything that we track. Yeah, or Mr. Wahlberg. No. Interesting. I mean, we can take that back to our data committee and look at future use around that. No. We're here about housing data. So, I mean, I think that's fair, but I also don't want to put him on the spot. So,
that we might be in between appraisal years on tax appeals. So people are going to be getting new assessments this year. So there'll probably be appeals next year, most likely. That could be part of
it. Jason up front here. And while we're going to that one, we have one online. Paul, this is for you. So you get to read that. All right. Is the increase in final plats permitting attributable to any large-scale subdivisions or single projects as in previous years or spread out among multiple projects of this last year?
Well, final plats are from projects that are from several years ago, and I don't think I think it's from several projects from years ago. So no, I don't think it's from a single project that was approved 2 or 3 or 4 years ago. I think it's, and I don't have a list of the projects that were filed. So I would say it's from several projects that have been in the works, but it's reflective of a desire to bring more houses, more interest in investing money in projects and bringing lots to market. So.
My question's for Paul. I'm Shannon Hilliard at Inc. Realty Group. I have a client who wants to subdivide her property. She wants to do a lot line relocation, but current zoning regulations don't allow it because of the minimum lot size requirement. And she was told, ask us again in May. Can you tell us more about that, or is that on the down low?
Well, I would say Yeah, I would say that the city is optimistic that they're going to have new codes by May. They're going to have a draft in April, which is really exciting because usually code reform can take a year or longer. So we should all be looking forward to seeing new subdivision and zoning codes this spring and summer. Yeah.
This question is for Josh. Is there any data on how Airbnb is affecting the rental market, or in other words, short-term vacation rentals?
The data that I've been able to compile is based on AirDNA, which has the greater Missoula area as its data set. So it's not the whole of Missoula County. It's not city limits, just kind of a greater amalgamous area. So according to AirDNA, which compiles information across Airbnb, Vrbo, Expedia, TripAdvisor, all the online travel agents, there's 1.1 thousand short-term rentals in existence in and around Missoula, which is less than 1% of the housing stock. We're seeing vacancy rates increase on short-term rentals kind of across the board, and talked about seasonality earlier. That's even more marked on short-term rentals through the winter months, virtually probably a 90+% vacancy rate across the board. So a lot of short-term rentals, and this is anecdotal information, so take that with a grain of salt, are moving back to midterm leasing a certain time of the year, or through operational costs just will not be able to sustain that model. And a lot of those units will either be sold back off into home ownership or back into traditional rentals. So I don't think it's as big of an issue. The city does now require your licensing permits to be entered into the short-term rental OTAs, the online travel agents. So there is a push by the city to restrict and weed out those people that are not operating appropriately with permits.
Go back into the room.
Yeah, sorry. It's really loud back here with the air conditioning or heat or whatever it is. Just to follow up on the rental vacancy, it was hard to see the different colors in the graph because I'm sitting in the back, but my assumption is, and I think you referenced this, but I wanted you to just talk about it a little bit more, is that seasonally in the summertime, we have a higher vacancy rate, which I assume since we're a college town, but could you just, what are those numbers looking like? Because winter, it sounds like we have a lower vacancy rate, but summer it's higher. And what are we averaging for the last couple of years?
Pull that slide up, Jeff. Thanks. So great question. Unpacking that a little bit. Yeah, it's different across different asset class types. You know, your multifamily housing can be vacant in the wintertime and turn over quickly. Obviously, a 1 and 2 bedroom apartment is easier to fill through the winter months because it's a more nomadic renter population. However, the larger single family homes usually turn over in the summer months if they turn over at all. So the spike in vacancy rate this year is a little bit misleading because I think it's attributed to operational costs and turnover times as well as rental costs, right? So a longer turnover time, if it takes you, let's say 25 days to turn a unit instead of 7 days to turn a unit based on supply of materials and labor supply, that impacts the vacancy rate as well. So I'm not sure if that entirely answers your question, but if you go into the slide, you can segment by single family, multifamily, duplex units, and by the bedroom types as well. So you can kind of drill down a little bit further on each of those, both questions, vacancy rate and average rent costs across types.
Thank you, Jason.
Hi, Julie Lacey. You talked about the demand for Section 8. Do you have any data around the supply and how many units have come on, or any information on that?
I mean, so to a voucher holder, somebody with a Section 8 voucher does not have to move into an affordable housing unit. So a unit that is built with low-income housing tax credits or any other kind of income restrictions when it comes to folks moving in. We did have a large influx of income restricted units between the Trinity and the Villaggio apartments that both came online last year. And so we did see a great uptick in available apartments for those voucher holders, but sometimes voucher holders are interested in a different model. They maybe want to live in a single family home and not a multifamily apartment. And that's one of the great things about a voucher is it's meant to really give a lot more options to folks. And as I discussed, some of those challenges are there just aren't as many of those options. And sometimes the amount that the voucher is willing to pay and the amount that is being charged for rent are mismatched. So they can no longer move into that. There are also standards of living associated with those vouchers. And so we want to make sure that folks who make low to moderate incomes aren't living in substandard housing as well. And so there's some standards there that they have to meet.
We're going to go to one online, Jason, and then we'll come back to the room. I think, Paul, this is for you. Can the data tell which new builds are greenfield development versus infill development? And then in the new land use plan that really focuses on inward and infill, which would be important data to track?
Well, we don't have, I don't have any data on where the developments are per se. I can look at that. I can anecdotally look and see where subdivisions are approved based on, the city has a website and it shows you information on subdivisions that are proposed, which I do look at. But the comment there is not incorrect. It does, the city's plan is to focus inward. It is to put more homes in the city of Missoula, where there's existing infrastructure to focus inward and to have infill. So it's a valid point.
And Paul, it's fair to say that when you think about infill, that is also referencing a phrase we commonly say, density. Yeah. Okay, great. In the room.
This is Tyson O'Connell with United Housing Partners. I'd like to follow up on one of the earlier questions. How long does it currently take under the current code from subdivision submission to subdivision approval? And then also, how long does it take from building permit submission to building permit approval?
Paul, we'll put that slide up on.
Well, there are two different questions. So on subdivision approval, just on the entitlement phase, if somebody came into my office and said, hey, I want to do a subdivision, that can easily take 8 months to 12 months from when they walk into my office to when we're in front of the city council or county commissioners. And it can take much longer depending on if there's significant obstacles to overcome. You've got design infrastructure, you've got to potentially acquire easements. There's all sorts of obstacles that you have to overcome to get a subdivision approved. And I'm not sure if that's the exact question you're answering. You might be saying, when can I actually build a house? And if that's the question you're asking, when the day you walk into my office from when I actually build a house, that can be 4 years, 5 years. Yeah, because
I'm asking on a macro scale. And then, and then what about the building?
I'm not a builder. I don't build. I think maybe months, I think, but I'm not a builder. I work with builders. I think that's closer to months, but I don't know the answer to that. I'm just speculating.
Is there anyone that can tell us what the new code would do to those timelines from 4 to 5 years? Do we have anybody that can speak to that?
On behalf of the organization, I can just say that is one of the things that we're hoping to see out of the code reform change is shorter timelines. I think it's too soon to tell. We have to wait as we get into the next phase of that project. And we're working with the city to do some use casing so that we can look at specific projects in conjunction with the Builder Association to look at measuring some projects and see that they will actually shorten their timeline. It's our expectation, and we've communicated this, Missoula Organization of Realtors communicated to the city that we expect to see a shorter timeline. Thanks. Anyone else in the room or online? In the room in the back.
I was just wondering about, I don't know if you have any data, but about remodeling and additions in permitting, or whether even anecdotal with, high interest rates and tight market, if people are looking to remodel rather than sell and move.
We don't really track in our data set around remodels. And we really don't track that from a permitting perspective either. So yeah, I'm sorry. We just don't have collect that data. Thank you. Anyone else? Mr. Brick.
Oh, me always got a question.
Oh, sorry.
Well, that's great. I could use two, you know me.
I won't hang on to it. Brian, I'm curious, to go back to this neighborhood and sort of that supply and where we're at in those. Are we seeing any dramatic change in those trends? I mean, we've been talking about the larger 750 pluses for some time now. Are we seeing any dramatic change or shift, or are we kind of on a steady pattern here in terms of how that neighborhood matrix works out?
Dennis, I think I would say the change that we are seeing is more neighborhoods are coming into balance, if you will. And what you can see here, I think, from previous years' reports, when we talked about neighborhoods, especially when you were equating it to supply, for the most part, we had generally undersupply across all points, or dramatically low supply, especially in our most affordable, like as Mandy reported as well, like Old West Side, North Side, Franklin to Fort, and South Hills, areas like that. So supply is increasing a bit, but it's still, as we can see in a lot of areas, it's still falling short. So a little bit more balance creeping in. Some other things trends wise that we've noticed has changed was when we were starting to hit more affordability challenges, especially in 22 and 23, we saw in some cases like Grant Creek and Miller Creek, Linda Vista area, places with more top dollar homes would see a lot more variation in supply. And it could be some signs of trends in the market where the move up buyer sell and move up into a higher price point is starting to influence more, because we're seeing a little bit more balance in supply in some of those points as well too.
We have time for one more question. Otherwise we can wrap. Okay. Okay, cool. Go.
Yeah. You see that thing.
Make it a question and not a statement.
I don't know if you need a microphone. I think I do.
You do. What you do.
Okay. I can't hold it. Okay. What up? Yeah, no, the two TED developments in the Y. Are those, where are those at? The Garden Valley development, and then there's the Meadows. Phenomenal plans, by the way.
Yeah, I'm not sure if they're in the county, then they wouldn't. Yeah, if they're in the county, they're not reflected as approved yet, because we've had zero. If you look at the numbers, we've had zero. The one project that was approved in 2018 was a TED, and it was in the Y. And the reason we don't see many in the county, you have to have zoning, and you have to have been subdivided, and then in most cases for residential subdivisions, you have to have access to water and sewer, and that's just a kind of a Goldilocks project in the county. I'm not sure. It doesn't reflect in the numbers. So maybe it's in the works.
Or would go towards the development in Bonner.
I think you're
It's
okay. Oh, okay. Yeah, a different TED. Yeah. So
it's development in Bonner.
Let's pull the conversation back to the front of the room, if we could, please. How about we talk about this offline after the meeting, and we'll figure it out. Okay. No, it's all good. It's all good. Well, on behalf of Missoula Organization of Realtors, we appreciate everybody coming today. For members of the press, we do have a packet that's in your email already that has a lot of these slides in it. And I would just, Jeff, will you pull back up the QR code? Yeah, I would just encourage anyone, if you're a landlord or property management, encourage you to fill this out. I think the more data that we collect in the rental space, the better it helps the community in decision making. So once again, thanks for being here today. Greatly appreciate your time, those on Zoom, and have a good rest of your day and enjoy the sunshine. Thank you.